call to order the October 2nd, 2017 City Council regular meeting and ask those in the audience who'd like to join the council and myself in the Pledge of Allegiance to please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving now to special business. First item, Agenda Bill 7391, proposed 2018 budget. And I'll be making a presentation on that as soon as I find it. Oh, there it is.
Oh, yeah.
I had originally thought that everyone was here this evening to hear my presentation on the 2018 budget, and so I think this is the largest audience I have ever had. Issaquah citizens, community members, employees, and City Council. Tonight I'm pleased to present my proposed 2018 budget. Each year, I'm fortunate to stand before you and present my financial plan for the coming year. This is my opportunity to highlight how we'll provide quality services that support safe and vibrant communities. Before I share some highlights of this year's proposed budget, I'd like to extend my thanks to our hardworking staff who face the challenging task of meeting current needs and preparing for future ones. Our team is motivated to keep the most diverse business in Issaquah, our city government, running smoothly. They are invaluable in assisting me with this proposed budget. While we don't have a crystal ball for 2018, the proposal before you tonight is fiscally sound, responsible, and balanced. This year, I gave our team a list of parameters to guide this development of our budget. In addition to responding to new regulations, contractual requirements, and the city's fiscal policies, my budget is aligned with these parameters. First, financial sustainability, including not relying on general fund balance. Maintaining community safety, focusing on quality over quantity, implementing post-moratorium action plans, enhancing our investment in staff development, continuing our investment in technology, including the Munis system and lean principles for process improvements, evaluating new funding sources or expanding existing revenue, maintaining existing assets and levels of service, and limiting new staff positions or modifications to current staffing positions to those that address these budget parameters. You'll hear me feature several of those parameters tonight as I share my budget highlights, as well as how the newly adopted 5-year capital improvement plan is integrated into our financial roadmap for next year. One of my main budget goals is to ensure the maintenance of our assets and current levels of service. That is no easy task in a community with a growing population, expanding business sector, and ever-changing, complicated demands. Nor does it mean that we simply continue with the status quo. Status quo does not keep us on pace and does not reflect our commitment to continuous improvement. As we've added nearly 4,000 new residents, and as employers in this robust economy have added new jobs, and as Issaquah continues to beckon those who seek outdoor and indoor adventures, our service demands increase. With 92% of Issaquah residents recently stating that the city is an excellent or good place to live, we have a high bar to uphold. We embrace that challenge. Some of those increased demands can be met through implementing new technologies that enhance our efficiencies and customer service. This budget includes several exciting outward-facing programs and applications that will significantly improve our customers' options for self-service and online access to information, including recreation registration, online utility billing, and a tool for budget development and reporting. My proposed budget also includes the addition of a position called a Senior ERP, or Enterprise Resource Planning Solutions Architect, that will boost the connectivity and performance of our software solutions and enable more lean practices citywide. Another example is from our police department, where I propose adding a third dispatch console to help our emergency communications staff handle an increased call volume. On a more technical note, my budget reflects new information technology cost allocation changes in department budgets and a consolidation of tech-related funding in IT's internal service fund budget. This is one of the first steps we are taking to achieve better internal cost allocation. To meet our growing demands, we're adding or expanding several services in 2018. We propose expanding the operating hours of the Issaquah Community Center and Julius Bone Pool to Sundays, and we've included funds to provide lunch service 5 days a week, as well as more transportation services at the Issaquah Senior Center. And as we head into 2018, we will be working side by side with King County Metro and the community to develop a pilot program that enhances transit options to and from Tallis and Squawk Mountain. We also plan to add hours to our neighborhood engagement program, which recently completed a successful first year, implementing a range of new communication tools and connection opportunities. As our community grows and its demographics change, we will be focusing on developing our equity and culture competency skills, which may lead to more service improvements in the future. I've also included funds for an Old Town parking study to respond to City Council's request to provide recommendations on this issue. In addition, I'm excited to start master planning based on recommendations that we will receive from the Park Strategic Plan, which will be completed this year. As I've mentioned, the top priority for my 2018 budget is community safety. To that end, I have proposed adding 3 full-time police officers, a police communications supervisor, additional hours to make our emergency preparedness coordinator a full-time position, and, as previously stated, a third dispatch console. Issaquah remains a very safe community. This is clear from our reported crime statistics and from the perception of our residents. Our community continues to enjoy a lower crime rate than other state averages. Just this year, 90% of our residents gave overall safety in Issaquah good or excellent ratings, and 98% gave positive scores to safety in our neighborhoods. However, the volume of calls our police department receives has grown with our population, and our residents seek increased visibility of our police departments for crime prevention and traffic enforcement purposes. Meanwhile, the rise in police activity requires the support of additional resources within our 911 dispatch center. That increased visibility and response to community demands can only be achieved through building the capacity of the department. Other departments are also working to keeping Issaquah a safe place. For example, our Public Works Engineering team will be hard at work next year designing a long list of ADA, that's Americans with Disability Act, improvements to sidewalks as part of our pavement management program. Our Office of Sustainability will begin advancing strategies from the Healthy Community Needs Assessment that was completed this year. And our Public Works Operations Department will increase its sidewalk inspection program. Our citywide team will oversee the design and construction of many projects that have safety components, such as continued work on Newport Way, Gilman Boulevard, North Sammamish Road, telemetry upgrades, replacement of emergency radios, and Providence Point intersection, our water system, and others. One area that is easily recognized as a top priority for the city is transportation. As Issaquah forms its new Transportation Advisory Board, I've included funding in the 2018 budget for the board's first assignment, the development of a mobility master plan. Over the course of the next year, our team will continue working with our strategic partners to advocate for improvements that could help Issaquah. We plan to further develop partnerships and lobby for improvements to State Route 18 and State Route 900, which would help keep pass-through traffic to state highways and from passing through Issaquah. At the state level, we will work with the Washington State Department of Transportation and the Federal Highway Administration on the I-90 interchange justification report and shoulder lane use projects. And we will continue to play an active role in convening and participating in regional solution-seeking efforts, such as the Regional Transportation System Initiatives, as well as Sound Transit and King County Metro Transit projects. Inside our borders, we will also advance several local improvements, including the 62nd Street extension and intersection improvements of SR 900, 12th Avenue, and 17th Avenue, which were part of the Costco Development Agreement traffic mitigation plan. The city continues to be in excellent financial health. With our new financial management policy in place, the target range for our general fund reserves increased from 8 to 15% to 15 to 20%. We will begin 2018 with an estimated fund balance of over $16 million in the general fund, which represents 36% of our total expenditures. And we will achieve a balance between current anticipated revenues and expenditures. Our team has an impressive track record for managing public funds. Issaquah is one of the few cities in Washington state to achieve the AAA bond rating from Standard & Poor's. My proposed budget for the general fund includes a 2.2% decrease of expenditures, primarily due to last year's one-time transfers from the general fund to support capital projects. Proposed revenues are anticipated to increase 9%. No general fund balance has been used, and one of my budget parameters, being physical sustainability, will update our developer mitigation fees charged for fire, parks, police, transportation, and general government. In addition, we will conduct a review of solid waste services and rates and perform a building and solar evaluation so that we can look for opportunities to reduce energy costs and continue our investment in environmental sustainability. Turning our focus to internal operations, the second phase of our classification and compensation study will begin to illustrate how our compensation system should be structured to ensure both proper stewardship of public funds, but also effective strategies for attracting and retaining our most critical asset, high-quality employees. We will also invest in space planning to address concerns about cramped facilities, inefficient use of space, and operating from multiple aging facilities. Major changes in revenues include increased collections from our business and occupancy tax, building permits, and plan check fees and property taxes. While the city's limited 1% property tax increase will only generate $86,300 next year, we anticipate that new construction will add value to the base and generate $223,000 in new revenue. Next year, we will launch a purchasing card program for staff that will generate rebates, which is a new source of revenue, as well as improve our procurement processes. As we look to the future, we must develop strategies for responding to revenue losses, such as the state legislature's intent to reduce the amount of streamlined sales tax Issaquah and other cities receive. Revenue diversification will continue to be an important solution. To that end, we will continue to seek grants and evaluate other revenue possibilities. In 2018, we anticipate receiving $1.9 million from intergovernmental and granting agencies to help us pay for programs, services, and capital projects. On the expenditure side of the budget, our most significant increases are for our cost of business expenses, such as salaries and benefits. The proposed budget includes an additional 5.25 full-time equivalent employees in the general fund, with overall salary and benefits increasing 4.2%. Other significant expenditure increases includes our payment to Eastside Fire and Rescue of some $275,000 and new recreation registration software and city facility space planning. The proposed budget also reflects a significant expenditure of our real estate excise tax, or REIT, funds for the purpose of supporting a robust capital improvement plan. Next year, we plan to update the city's sign code and train staff on the new regulations. This need results from a U.S. Supreme Court decision that that all municipalities must implement. I've also included an allocation for staff and city council to begin a citywide strategic planning effort, which will provide greater clarity on how to prioritize future initiatives, projects, programs, and budgets. As I propose my final budget as mayor, I am confident that Issaquah's team, including our dedicated elected leaders and talented staff, can successfully address any challenges that lie ahead. By focusing on transportation and technology investments, enhanced customer service, public safety, and long-range planning, my proposed budget positions Issaquah for a bright and successful future. Okay. Our next item under special business is Agenda Bill 7487, King County Property Prop 1, Levy Lid Lift for Veterans, Seniors, and Vulnerable Populations ballot item. And here to present that information is I'm looking for your name,
Leo.
but I know, and I thank you for coming. Would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Leo Flor, and I work at the King County Department of Community and Human Services, and I'm here tonight at your invitation, thank you, to provide an informational presentation about the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy, which will be on the ballot in November of this year. As I just alluded to, the scope of the presentation is informational. It being a currently considered ballot measure, public employees are limited to providing facts and not acting to favor or disfavor a ballot measure. So we do have a current Veterans and Human Services Levy in King County. It was first approved in 2005 and then again in 2011. The basic contours of the levy as it currently exists: it's a property tax 6-year levy lid lift approved at 6-year duration each time at a rate of 5 cents per $1,000 of assessed valuation. The current levy generates proceeds that are then divided into 2 groups, one for veterans and their families, and then another for what the ordinance refers to as vulnerable populations, a collection of persons throughout the community who benefit from the additional human services support. So examples of that include mothers who are participating in the WIC program. They have integrated mental health screening for those mothers. There are also play and learn groups that provide parenting assistance for low-income families who participate in those programs. The current levy's goals to prevent and to reduce homelessness, to reduce the unnecessary or expensive use of jails or emergency rooms, and then to increase self-sufficiency amongst the populations that it serves. For folks who are interested in learning more about what the levy has done for the last 12 years that it's been in effect, we do have reporting. We are required by ordinance to report twice per year, both on the fiscal management and then performance management of the levy according to its goals, and I'll get to what its goals look like on the next slide. But all of that is publicly available so that somebody could see every 6 months how the levy is spending relative to its allocated proceeds, and then again how each individual program performs relative to its performance measures. The levy does, in its current form, have a set of more than 80 performance measures. So each program that is funded by the levy, in the contracting process, the requirements of that particular program are set out, and those are publicly available at the website that's on the list there, prospectively, so that somebody can see what standards a particular program is to meet this year if it's to comply with the terms of the contract and then to receive its full funding amount. As proposed, so this now transitions from a brief description of the current Veterans and Human Services levy to the proposed Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services levy. It's been proposed for the November ballot as a 6-year levy lid lift with a rate of 10 cents per $1,000 of assessed valuation. And then, as the name implies, rather than the current 2 population structure, which has half of proceeds allocated towards veterans and their families and the other half towards vulnerable populations, this current structure adds a third focus population, so veterans and their families, seniors and their caregivers, and then vulnerable populations. To get into the specifics, and these are all really just, this is a sort of one-slide embodiment of the confines of the ordinance itself. So proceeds are collected at 10 cents per $1,000 of assessed valuation. The projected proceeds for 1 year would be $52.3 million. Those proceeds are then divided into 3 parts after reserving a small amount, 1% for what the ordinance calls capacity building, and then reserving an additional $300,000 per year that would be used by the county council to mitigate pro-rationing if pro-rationing or suppression were to occur to any junior taxing district. And then the remainder divided into 3. So that's the 17 that you see there. So essentially $17 million of proceeds that would be allocated for veterans and their families. $17 million for seniors and their caregivers, where there's an additional condition that I'll explain momentarily, and then the last third, $17 million for vulnerable populations, where the ordinance lists in detail quite a few potential vulnerable populations. Examples that are listed within the ordinance are persons with disabilities and their caregivers, survivors of domestic violence or sexual assault. The yellow house that you see in the center is the first of 2 conditions. So one of what that basically says is that in the first year of the levy, at least 50% of the proceeds from each of the thirds must be spent to promote housing stability for the recipient population. So 50% of the $17 million to promote housing stability for veterans and their families, for example. There's a slide that will follow shortly that describes what housing stability within the context of the ordinance refers to. The second condition, and this is specific to the seniors third, is that half of the seniors third must be spent to promote regional health and human services for seniors who are veterans or their families or their caregivers. So in other words, half of the proceeds from that third for seniors to be spent on seniors who are veterans and their families. And that restriction remains in effect every year until one of 2 things happens, and this is the 2 bullets at the very bottom left-hand corner of the slide. One, that 75% of the number of seniors who were homeless veterans at the time the ordinance was enacted in July 21st of this year, until 75% of those persons are housed, or until King County has expended $24 million in an attempt to house senior veterans. Once either of those 2 conditions are met, then the full senior allocation would then be unrestricted, so for any senior, irregardless of their veteran status. Any questions on the structure that I could answer before proceeding?
Doesn't look like it, so proceed.
Thank you, sir. Another question, just what does the ordinance provide for? I mentioned a phrase, regional health and human services. So what types of things does the ordinance allow proceeds to be spent on? What you see on the slide here is really 5 categories of expenditure, and so that's top to bottom on the left-hand side, where the populations that the levy is intended to serve are, from left to right on the top. So healthy living, fiscal stability, housing stability, social engagement, and then service system access and improvement. And these are categories that are based on the 5 most frequently brought up issue areas that a series of community engagement events last year surfaced as we went through. So 44 community meetings, over 1,000 participants, and the answers really sort of aggregated into these 5 categories with the exception of a few outliers. Results-based accountability, so this is the planning methodology that King County is really using for a number of the the initiatives that are going forth right now. So the mental illness and drug dependency sales tax, the Best Starts for Kids property or levy property tax, and now the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services levy as proposed would all use this results-based accountability methodology. There's a notation to the book that sort of lays that out for folks who are interested, but the idea being to start with results, to ensure that there's a mechanism to measure whether or not outcomes are being achieved and to not rely on output or throughput of the system as the measure of whether or not the levy itself is successful. Briefly, as to what is housing stability, if you'll recall, there was that yellow house in the middle of the Venn diagram a few slides ago. So housing stability refers potentially to the actual construction of housing through capital, could also refer to the operation of previously constructed housing. So the Veterans and Human Services levy to date has contributed to the construction of over 2,000 units of affordable housing. So many of those continue to require operating funds to continue providing permanent supportive housing to families. And then it could also mean a number of services that could either prevent homelessness or assist somebody in stabilizing once they're housed. So examples of that are shallow rent subsidies or home modifications for seniors to allow seniors to remain in place. It could be service connected or system connected housing, which is a concept that is embedded within the ordinance, and that refers to, for example, we have a number of veterans who are incarcerated in King County right now for whom King County invests in reentry training. So services to assist them in the transition from incarceration to the community. Right now, depending on when you take a look at it, somewhere between 52 and 62% of them actually release from jail into homelessness. And so an example of system-connected housing would be housing that's intended to provide a place for transitioning veterans from incarceration into a housed situation to promote their stability. Another question, just to provide the information on, is how much is 10 cents per $1,000 for assessed valuation? Some of the feedback that we've previously heard is that just talking about the median is not necessarily helpful in a county where the prices are really, I should say, the values are as diverse as they are. So what I've depicted here is the assessed values. Just as a factual matter, King County levies its property taxes on assessed values and not sales prices. And in some markets, those can vary from each other significantly. So the $626,000 median 2017 residential value in Issaquah at 10 cents per $1,000 is a $62.60 total levy cost, and that is total. So there is a current levy cost for everybody who's within King County, and that's assessed at approximately 4 cents per $1,000 right now. So the difference between that 4 cents rate and the rate that's depicted here would be the additional 6 cent rate. I can get into why I'm saying 4 cents instead of 5 cents if the council members or you, Mr. Mayor, would like me to. Otherwise, I can continue moving.
Continue.
All right. Process-wise, so the executive just last Friday actually transmitted his plan for the first year of levy expenditures. So that's an available document now that was transmitted. It's called the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy Proposed Transition Plan, and contingent upon the outcome of the election, and then contingent upon County Council and Regional Policy Committee consideration of the plan, and then if they chose to adopt it, it would control the first year expenditures, and that's where the plan that really describes what the first year 50% for housing stability funds would do. Going backwards, there has also been the plan that if adopted, would recertify the current citizen oversight board. So there are 2 citizen oversight boards that sit and review levy expenditures on a bi-monthly basis and review its annual performance. And so a separate ordinance has been transmitted to continue those boards and to add one for seniors. And then the next big phase, which is now the bottom right-hand purple bar, is the implementation plan. So that would be the plan, again, contingent upon the outcome of the election in November, that would, if adopted by the County Council and the Regional Policy Committee, control the final 5 years of the levy period.
And I see questions up there. Are there questions of Leo? Just for background information, this presentation was requested by a council leadership, and I want to thank you for responding very, very quickly to come provide information. This was an informational-only presentation, unless the council directs any other action. And seeing none then, thanks for coming all the way to Issaquah this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members.
Moving now to audience comments. I'm going to ask our city attorney to provide some little bit of context here before audience comments. And if you would, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, as you can see up on the overhead, there are certain rules that we have to continue to follow with respect to this annexation and pre-annexation zoning question. Because the pre-annexation zoning itself is quasi-judicial and the hearing on the pre-annexation zoning has closed, the council may not take new information on that issue, and members of the public may not comment on that particular issue in items from the audience. Members of the public can comment on the decision as to whether or not to annex the property. Annexation itself is legislative, and you may hear from the public relating to annexation. Members of the public may also comment on the comprehensive plan designations that are proposed for the property. Again, those are legislative, and you can hear comment on them. What you cannot hear comment on is the pre-annexation zoning, the actual setting of the zoning on the property and its uses. So other matters we can talk about as people come up, but that's the basic parameters for the public comment period this evening.
Thank you. Now, citizen comments are an important part of the public process. We take them seriously and factor them into the decisions that we make. Anyone from the public who wishes to comment on tonight's agenda items or other topics should do so at this time. Please direct your comments to the entire council and not individuals. While this is not a question and answer session, we will contact you to follow up if needed. If you did not have an opportunity to include your email address, please jot that down on the clipboard that will be on the table in front of me in a few minutes. When recognized, please come to the lectern, speak into the microphone, state your name, address, and any relationship to the city. Limit your comments to 5 minutes. When the yellow light comes on, you're within the last minute of your comment period. If you use the full 5 minutes, the timer will sound to indicate the end of your allotted time. Again, public comments, citizen comments, written and verbal, are an important aspect of the public process. We take them seriously and factor them into the decisions that we make. Has anyone signed up to speak?
Yes, Ron Thiele.
Good evening, Ron Thiele, Superintendent of the Issaquah School District, Council, Mayor Butler. Because I have not had an opportunity to address the council since your last meeting, I wanted to thank the council and the city staff for the collaborative work that you did with the school district on the compact school building codes. Your approval of these new codes will allow us to move forward with some potential projects within the city, and we thank you very much for those efforts. I also wanted to share some information related to timelines for the opening of a new elementary school by September of 2020. We've talked a lot about that publicly, about our need to build an elementary school by 2020. I've previously shared that we've been growing by some 400 to 500 students each year. Our official count day is October 1, or the first day of the month, the working day of the month, which was today, and we are in fact up nearly 500 students from this time last year. So what does it take for us to get a school built by 2020? I'm going to give you some approximate dates, but I want you to know that these approximations are based on our experience building a number of schools over the years. And I'm going to work kind of from the end backwards. So first of all, it's about 15 to 16 months from groundbreaking to occupancy, or the actual construction time of an elementary school. The design, again, is approximately 12 months of design and permitting from the time of purchase of a piece of property. Our due diligence, what we would do once we can go forward and really dig into a piece of property, typically takes around 3 to 4 months. That's our due diligence feasibility on a potential piece of property. And about a 1 to 3 month for a purchase and sale negotiations, and then a time for, if it's a city-purchased piece of property, like then that would require city council action, and of course it requires school board action to actually do that. So we believe we only have a month or two of wiggle room in this schedule to complete a project in elementary school by 2020 in order to provide the desperately needed additional classroom space for our community. So I thought it would just be good, because a lot of times you say, well, 35 months, because that's what it would be from today, seems like a long time, but we have been, and again, these are approximations, but we feel like we're getting pretty close to that window. We need to start moving on some of these things. So that's all I wanted to share tonight. Again, thank you to the council for your public service and your willingness to tackle some very difficult issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Robert Swanson.
I didn't know I was going to be able to speak tonight. I just want to thank the City Council, Mayor, and the City Clerk's office. I'd like to claim I had a little effect on that right there. I think it's a good policy to have right there, so hope it helps any future novelists. Anyway, it's great to be here. I have a friend that's up in the Issaquah Highlands. His name is Paul. Just met him a few weeks ago. He told me about the traffic going up there. So I went around taking some pictures. I'm just going to say that the traffic going by the school up there, Grand Ridge, I think that's the name. Good, got it right. It's terrible. I couldn't believe it. People were flying right by. It's not in my neighborhood in any way, shape, or form, but you know what? The kids in Issaquah, anywhere in the United States, are our kids. And so that has to be dealt with. I don't know how you deal with that. I don't know if they have little flashing lights, saying, hey, stop, or people, guards, the 2 policemen you're going to hire, be a great location to put one of them. Because the kids, from what I hear, somebody died.
3.
3?
You said 2.
Oh, 3. Okay, 3. That's great. More for the kids. So I think that's an excellent idea. Next thing I just want to say is, I think at the last meeting, you guys were talking about how you're going to get with the school board. I give you 2 big thumbs up. I'd give you 10 if I had 10 thumbs. I think, okay, I'm going to be honest here. That should have happened about 5 years ago. Say what you want on that. I think the school board, I think the city council, the city itself probably wouldn't be in such an emergency if we would have had some communication. But that's just me. I'm glad it's happening, but it should have happened earlier. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I think it's great to get those policemen up there to help out those kids.
Thank you, Robert.
Lori Pittman.
See if I can get my readers to work well.
I needed those a little while ago.
I know it's difficult. I understand if you're in pain. City of Issaquah Council members and Mayor, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Lori Pittman, and I am a resident of Issaquah. I am here representing several members of a local running club from Paragon Training Center on Gilman Boulevard. Got a few of us here. As you know, a recent fatality collision has occurred on September 22nd at the intersection of East Lake Sammamish and Southeast 56th Street. My comments are intended to express our condolences to the family of the deceased and also to call on the city to make the intersection safer. The collision resulted in the death of a bicyclist, a sports and outdoor enthusiast. It could have been any one of us here today, myself or my daughter-in-law and her newborn child. For several years, this intersection has been recognized as a dangerous one and in need of additional resources to make it safer. Initial reports, including eyewitness reports, indicate the cyclist was riding his bicycle normally through the crosswalk with a solid walk signal, and also in accordance with all state pedestrian and bicyclist laws. There was also an additional information given that another bicyclist was going along the crosswalk in the opposite direction. The bicyclist was killed as he was riding in the same direction as traffic turning to the right. Our running group knows to be vigilant at this intersection because drivers do not look for pedestrians due to the engineering of the intersection. Drivers see a green light and just go. I have almost been hit by a car myself many times, too many to count. I have seen other running group members almost struck by vehicles at a low speed. At times, we have had to scream and make exaggerated hand movements just to get a driver's attention to prevent a collision. It is a repetitive problem stemming from the design and method of how that intersection is controlled. Police enforcement could help, but it's not reasonable to expect the police to ticket their way out of this situation. We need long-term solutions to increase the safety of this intersection via road engineering. The city did authorize a pedestrian safety crossing study in 2015, and we appreciate that. At that time, the study indicated the intersection suffered from the exact problems outlined above. And all of this while still meeting federal guidelines for safety. It did recommend flashing beacons to be installed at the intersection, and if this did not address the issue, the study recommended installing pedestrian-activated buttons that turns on an electronic no right turn signal at the intersection. The beacons have been installed and were operational during this fatality collision. Unfortunately, those yellow flashing beacons and lights had no effect on a life lost due to inattentive driving and poor intersection design. The flashing beacons have clearly not worked, and drivers only focus on that green light. Therefore, we are urging the council to immediately take steps to implement additional options to install pedestrian-activated no-turn signal. This would either turn the signal red or cause the green light to turn to a blinking yellow with additional electronic sign activated, preventing a red turn. The cost to install this option is far outweighed by the increased probability of preventing yet another death. The city is in a position to ensure the safety of our running group and other outdoor enthusiasts that visit the city of Issaquah. We encourage you to make the right decision. It looks like my time's up. We encourage you to make the safe decision so that everyone can live and work and play here within safety. Thank you for your time, and we respectfully submit these comments for consideration with proper city and recommendations to forward to proper city departments.
Thank you, Lori. And you can drop those off with the city clerk if you would like.
Next is Chris Williams. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris Williams. I've been in the Issaquah area for about 10 years, and I have been a member of this running group that just so articulated the thoughts of our membership. So I've been a member of that group for about 5 years and have used this trail extensively. And I just wanted to add my personal comments to this wonderful presentation that Laurie just did. I won't take very long. What I'm going to do is urge each member of the council and you, Mayor, to take 20 minutes of your time this coming weekend, Saturday or Sunday morning, somewhere between 9 and 11 o'clock, and look south and do 3 runs through of the lights, be on the north side and go through 3 runs of the lights, 20 minutes of your time maximum. I can assure you in 6 run-throughs of those lights, you will have at least one what the faux moment. This was not unfortunate. This was not sad. The death of this cyclist was an inevitable lottery. The trail is going to be used even more when we open up the other side with the restoration and work that's been done, which we are very, very grateful for as we use that trail a lot. It's a wonderful, wonderful addition to this community and should be used. But in the use of it, this problem will become even more difficult. If you are a humanitarian, if you are concerned about your citizenship, if you are purely risk management on the insurance side, these comments are public now. Please, regardless however you come to this, please take 20 minutes of your time and go and stand at that traffic light and watch what happens. You will be shocked. It is a very, very busy, you've got 2 groups coming together. You've got a very, very busy intersection, a lot of people coming and going, and you have a wonderful trail. And those 2 are clashing, and something needs to be done, and I urge you to take a look before even more lives are lost. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chris.
Lisa Callan.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Butler. My name is Lisa Callan, and I'm here representing the Issaquah School District School Board this evening. There are many factors that make a city successful and a great place to live. A community that cherishes and supports all its people and their values is no easy thing to accomplish. Building and providing schools is the responsibility of the school district. Ensuring schools can be and will be built to support the citizenry is a responsibility of the City Council. By ensuring schools can be built and are built within our city limits, you're making sure our community will continue to thrive. You are saying our children matter and they're a top priority. You are saying great schools are a core value that defines who we are as a city and a community. It takes both of us, a strong school district and strong city leadership, to provide for and educate our youth to their very fullest potential. You, the City Council, you've done this. You did this last council meeting by helping us and working with us to pass the compacted school land use code amendment changes. That action will allow the school district to build schools in a manner that are required in today's environment of scarce land, high costs, and a high demand for classroom space, and we thank you for that. We ask that every decision you make, and you continue to do, you continue to value that partnership and to know that it takes both of us to make this happen for our children. The Issaquah School District needs to build 4 new schools as soon as possible to meet the needs of the schools, the schools and the students that live here in Issaquah. The Issaquah Highlands alone has 1,200 elementary age children today, demanding a need for 2 elementary schools in that neighborhood, just that area by itself. So right now, we need that space. Please, with every decision and every turn, we ask that you ask yourselves in your decisions what can be done now to support the education of our youth. The Issaquah School District certainly values your strong partnership. We appreciate all that you have done. We appreciate all of the opportunities we're going to have working and going forward. And we value being a part of a strong community, and we certainly value being a good neighbor. And we thank you for your time and service, because we know you have tough and hard decisions to make, and setting all of, back up to the my point earlier, that creating a community that cherishes and supports all of its people and all their values is no easy thing to accomplish. So thank you for all that.
Thank you, Lisa.
Shalini Basal.
Good evening, City Council members and Honorable Mayor. I'm here to talk to the construction of new schools in the city. I live in the Issaquah Highlands area, and I've been a property owner and a resident for the last 10 years. I reside at 1790 26th Avenue Northeast. I have two children. One is a first grader and the other one is an eighth grader. A few years ago, when we came to Issaquah Highlands, the community was very attractive to us, and it's attractive to families with young children. My children went to the schools in the neighborhood, and I wasn't happy to see how crowded it was at the schools. There are 10 portables at Grand Ridge Elementary, and the community cannot accommodate the students, the elementary age students. We are seeing this problem continue into the middle schools also. And the population has been growing. It hasn't reduced. So as you consider decisions for new schools in West Highlands area, keep in mind the population is growing for the new students, and you're commuting them out of West Highlands. Currently, they're coming to Clark Elementary, which recently opened up, and it was remodeled, and it has also 10 portables. So the need for a new school or new schools is well established, and as a resident that has two children in the schools, I will say I was not happy to see how crowded the schools have been. They are doing a very nice job of educating the kids despite that, but our children deserve better. Also, for parents to commute kids out, you're adding trips, which are not that great for the environment. The value of having a school in the neighborhood where you can walk to the school cannot be overemphasized. So I'm here in support of schools in our neighborhoods.
Shalini, thank you.
Elizabeth Mapan.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Just a reminder that if you look up there, it talks a little bit about what you can comment on and what you shouldn't. And a specific location of a school is one of those things that should not be discussed during audience comments. We'll start the clock now, Elizabeth.
Thank you. My name is Elizabeth Maupin. I reside at 100 Big Bear Place, Northwest in Issaquah. I am here partly to say thank you for the promise of a bus on Squawk Mountain and Talus. Appreciate that a lot. I'd also like to bring you a little bit of information. The public health people in King County have discovered that in our area there are now fake painkillers that are laced with fentanyl. This is the drug which has caused a great many overdose deaths in British Columbia. If we had a safe injection site, that is a place where drugs can be tested. That is a place where it's possible to build relationships with people who are using illicit drugs. and possibly to find out where the supplies of these fentanyl-laced drugs are coming from. I hope that someday we will have such a site, maybe more than one, and that we will be able to stop what is likely to be a very deadly epidemic. I'd also like to speak to you about something that came up with the community needs assessment, and that was there is we want equity in this community, but there is an extreme disparity that needs to be investigated, and that is, why is it that people who identify as Black or African American experience 8 times the unemployment rate of other groups? It may be that this is a very small number and something is skewing the statistics, but I think we really need to know what's going on there. And in this vibrant community, we want to save things that speak to our heritage. Recently, a local landmark committee designated the Providence Heights campus as a landmark. It is a treasure for our community. I understand that currently the current owners of that property are suing the city and the county on the basis that they see themselves as a religious institution. Plateau Campus LLC has not acted as a religious institution. It has acted much more as a group seeking to make a real estate investment and to profit by that. I hope the city will seriously fight to keep our landmark status for Providence Heights campus. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Steve Pereira.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Butler, Council. Steve Pereira, 170 Northeast Dogwood Street, Issaquah, for about 10 years. So first thought, just echo Elizabeth Mopon's comments on Providence Heights, and it's deserving of a vigorous defense of its landmark status, and continue reaching out to each of you to help us maybe identify who or how to preserve that campus site. Second item, I commend the proposed additional 3 police officers for traffic enforcement. I'm sorry that folks need to be reminded to go the speed limit, in neighborhoods. It's unfortunate that's needed, but I think it's a good call. Thank you. Third item, item E on the consent calendar, the vertical mixed use. Again, just asking that each of you, it's great that it go forward to committee. I just think it needs a much broader comment and discussion for the whole city-wide before it gets enacted, pros, cons. I'm not taking a position at this point. It just is something that's going to impact us all. The bulk of my comments, though, have to do with the Kalkari Development Phase 2 and Phase 3. I attended the September 20th Development Commission meeting, and I had a couple thoughts I just wanted to share. The first was a sense of deja vu from a lot of the people that talked about it. We're not really that versed in land use or zoning and all those type of things. They talked about in things like the deer play here and we're a fun-friendly community. We don't really want it. I just would like to see a much better way of engaging and informing the community and how to reach out to the city council and city officials and staff in gaining that knowledge and conversations. I know that one of the proposals the mayor talked about was increasing the community engagement person, and one of her suggestions was a citizens academy. That could be a great thing, but I think there needs to be something much more robust to engage the community and how to engage with the PPC or with the Development Commission or with city staff on how to talk about the things that they need or that they want in the language that makes that happen. A second thought on that was, as part of any development that goes forward, there are fees that get assessed for development impacts in schools and parks, and then those fees get paid in the city, and the city has something like 10 years to decide how to use those to decide how the impacts will be implemented. It seems like there should be more of a direct correlation between the here's our proposal and can the schools accommodate the number of students that are going to go with that proposed development? Will there be a park for those local residents to use locally, and there should be a linked correlation between those happening and the development being approved, not just having 10 years as a long term to decide how to do that. So I'd like to see more of a connection between those two pieces as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
No one further has signed up to speak.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Hal Ferris. I've spoken to you before, and I came today just to give you an update of how we're progressing with the TOD project and progress that's been made since our last council meeting. As you recall, when the council passed to adopt the MOUs and execute those, which we did in September, we had not yet gotten CenturyLink to sign their part of the agreement, and they've done that. They did that shortly after. They made minor modifications to what the council approved. We got that done in time so that we could make our application to King County for the $10 million set aside for the Issaquah corridor. So that was the key thing that we were working towards. Other things that have been accomplished is that since that time, the city has completed their minor remediation of the King County site, which would be the replacement site for the CenturyLink to locate to. They've then submitted the report to the Department of Ecology for a no further action letter, all of which are required for us to be able to move forward. There's still much work to be done before the December 15th deadline when King County will make their award of the transit-oriented development funding for the project. And some of those we will continue to need engagement with the council and the staff, and we also look forward to engaging the community in the first quarter, as I said the last time, to talk about what the transit-oriented development project is about and to share our ideas and the vision of what the potential development would be for that site. So there's a lot of work to be done, and we'll continue to be back in front of the council and engaging the community. The key for us, as we said before, is to be able to be successful with that award from the King County funding that's going to enable the affordable housing at the CenturyLink site, which we're looking forward to developing. So that's just a quick update, and I wanted to come and fill you in before we keep moving along. Thank you.
Al, thank you for that update. Anyone else? Mary?
My name is Mary Lynch, and I reside at 2690 Northwest Oakcrest Drive, Issaquah, Washington. I just want to come back because on the 6th of September, I presented you a slideshow. I'm not going to do it to you or present it again on Vision Zero. I had presented it a year prior to that. I also followed up with a letter to you, Mayor Butler, asking for the status of where we were with that, because I was promised, and Tina Conforti and I both were promised over a year ago, that the city would have a Vision Zero-like program in place. And I think if we had a Vision Zero-like program in place, we might have prevented what happened with the death over a week ago. We still are not implementing the 4 E's. We're not doing the reach out for education and enforcement and engineering. I don't know how many of our streets, it's just not that intersection there at 56, it's the Target, it's Front Street, it's every place we have a crosswalk and a green light. People are not abiding by the pedestrians in the crosswalk. And the near misses and the accidents that we've had over the last several years, I think, is unconscionable. And we need, if we have to put a police officer at each one of those intersections for a number of days and start ticketing cars that do not yield to pedestrians. They've got to start receiving tickets. We've got to let it known throughout the community and through all our pass-throughs that we really mean business, and we need to enforce our pedestrians in the crosswalk. 2 deaths and a lot of other accidents that have happened over the last several years is just atrocious. And it shows our lack of follow-through on really committing to safety and to pedestrian safety. And yet we say we want to make this a pedestrian-friendly city. I don't see where I've seen any actions that have taken place to account for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Thank you, City Council and Mayor, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jenny Bingham. I live at 375 Southeast Andrews Street, and I have spoke about this before, and I know there's a study going on, but we continue, whether the light is functioning or it was a 4-way stop, we continue to have Andrews and Bush as our bypass. I don't know where we're at in finally getting some answers on what they're going to do, but it is needed, and it just seems like we're getting ignored on this. Talking about pedestrian friendly, I've also for 2 years talked about missing sidewalks and people to be able to walk on the sidewalk, or special needs people in wheelchairs use Andrews Street and have to go out in the road where it ends, right about 4th Avenue, go out on the road, then cars come off of Sunset Way, do not adhere to the stop sign that is there, and can hit that wheelchair person because there is no sidewalk going up to 4th Avenue off of Sunset Way. I don't know what the plan is here. Pedestrian friendly, bypass Andrews and Bush Street. We just need some answers. Is it going to be another fatality? I would sure hate to see that with a special needs person. Anyway, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Jenny. David, followed by Connie.
Thank you. David Kapler, 255 Southeast Andrews Street. Our new signal here is kind of interesting. But one thing I've noticed is that people see that green light from a long distance away and get their speeds up. I've seen a number of cars blow the old stop signs completely, but the speeds we're getting right here across, which I've even noticed tonight, when people see those green lights from a distance, whether they're coming northbound on 2nd or east or west on Sunset, they get those speeds up. So enforcement is going to be necessary, because I'm sure a lot of those cars end up running the red light because they're speeding up well ahead of that green. I do support the eventual annexation of the county island. I supported that for a long time. The existing parcel boundaries make no sense, however. I hope that's safe to say. I'm not suggesting anything about their zoning. If you look at the comp plan guidance you would get, and you look at the whole island property, things fit in to the comp plan in a reasonable way. Single parcels could have a single zoning and that kind of thing. I think the council really needs to know the ground up there, the top and the bottom. There's a lot of complications there with Penchel Reservoir site, road to that, where we're going to have that open space and those things. There's a lot to think about. I would hope that the council comes up with the proper zoning and redoes the parcel boundaries, so we end up with each parcel having a single zone rather than multiple zones, as it looks like now. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Connie?
Connie Marsh. I live up on Squawk. I'm going to talk about process, which is not on your list, but I think is okay. So zoning, as compared to code, has become very complex process-wise in the last few months, where everyone is a little confused on what they can say and they cannot say. And I was just reading the budget over there in my corner, and what I would like to propose for this next year's budget is some money that we can actually start to have our code accurately and consistently supply the process so the community knows that they can even talk and when they can talk without splitting hairs to the nth degree, because I think this has been an example of a process that we never, ever, ever, ever want to repeat again. So I think we can do so much better. And so soon you're going to be at those budget meetings, and I'm going to try to remember to tickle your ear about this process and remind you of the pain. And so then next year, when we do something else again, it'll be better. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Brian?
Thank you. My name is Brian Weinstein. My address is on file. I want to talk about two things. The first is a decision that was handed down in Superior Court about the Talus property and the landslide there specifically. I think I can talk about that. It's not on this list. It's interesting because if you read that particular decision, it talks about the truthfulness and the completeness of what are known as critical area reports. Sometimes I think when the city makes decisions on potential acquisition of property or selling property, critical area reports must be included in the packet that the council looks at. Buyers and sellers should be aware that in this particular lawsuit, a critical area report wasn't very truthful. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the comprehensive plan. And included in the comprehensive plan, I think, should be a principle that when citizens wish to speak about city transactions regarding policies, public land, public money, citizens should be able to do so. Citizens should not have to read through opinions from a city attorney about Robert's Rules of Order and parliamentary procedure about what is supposed to happen at a council meeting. I think residents should be able to understand transactions that involve their land and their money and not need a degree in soil, biology, the atmosphere, traffic, or have a degree in urban planning to understand what is being proposed for their community. Our comprehensive plan should make it very clear how community facilities, including schools, are being included in our future, where they should be sited and why, and that the council work fully and collaboratively and on a continual basis with the school board so that they never have to play catch-up again with the city that is continuing to grow as much as Issaquah. Finally, well, not quite finally, when the city is looking at its comprehensive plan and considering projects that are beneficial, for example, transit or oriented projects, should be very clear, and the citizens should know without question what the exact benefit these such projects will bring to the community, as well as the cost, including the cost to the school district if such projects are being made to have certain affordable or multifamily tax exemptions that will allow them to have a higher degree of population that does not pay taxes and benefits the school district. And the city should be able to identify and delineate this clearly to us, especially for a city that's already met its 2030 population goal. And finally, resolutions that come before this council that fail any of these tests should be rejected and not gone over and over and over again until a predefined objective that nobody knows about has been met. The process is not what citizens are here for, but we are a victim of the process. And the process needs to benefit the citizens, not a select few. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Dave, are you?
Good evening, Council and Mayor. David Wagoner, 360 Northwest Dogwood Street, Apartment K204 in Issaquah. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I want you to know that you don't have to go down and take that lady's word for it and go down and stand on the corner. Because Bill Freising and I were riding our bicycles the same place, the same way, and not only did they not stop, but we got honked at and the one finger salute. So I saluted back, okay? It's true. It happens every day of the week. Take the time and go down there. I promise you, you'll have an eye-opening. Get on a bicycle, try to ride across the street. You'll have an eye-opening experience. I'm a veteran, and I'm here tonight as a veteran. Many of you know I served on the King County Veterans Advisory Board for 12 years. I also was on the first levy that was instituted for King Council back in 2005 and worked with a guy by the name of Bob Patterson, and he is now our Attorney General for the state. And I'm not saying that as a name dropper. I'm saying that simply because it was true. We believed then, we believe now that this Veterans and Human Services levy is wonderful. And I can stand here and talk to you as a veteran about all the things that it's done. I'll start by talking about what the levy has done so far. We've got years of real impact and data that tells us we're using the money in a smart way. For folks who want the details, you can go to yesonprop1.com. But I'll hit a few things. Or you can pick up a report that comes out every year just like this report, and I can tell you that there's bricks and mortar that have taken veterans off of the street. And if I can get anybody to help take a veteran off the street, I'm there. I'm in. 35,000 people are served every year by the levy, and that number will increase if it's renewed in November. Since 2006, the levy has helped fund more than 2,000 units of affordable housing throughout King County, with some great examples like the William J. Wood Veterans Home in Federal Way. Bill Wood was a good friend of mine that served on the King County Veterans Advisory Board. He passed away 4 years ago, and what he helped get started, that I hope will continue for another 6 years. And I'm really not talking to the council now. Now I'm talking to the voters. You got to do it. You got to stand behind us. I'm telling you, it's taken veterans off of the street. So if we pass this thing, what can we expect for the next 6 years? For starters, we'll be able to expand on great veterans employment programs that take advantage of all great skills that vets learn while they're in the service. With a little boost, then they can get jobs in our economy and start paying the taxes that we need in the tax base. We also know there's a homeless vets problem in the area, and it'll be a whole lot worse if we put them out on the street. Please don't do that. Lastly, well, I could go on and on for a long time about this. So the last thing I want to say is vote yes on Prop 1. As a veteran, I'm telling you, it works. It has worked for the last 12 years. Let's make it work for another 6. We need your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Anyone else desiring to speak this evening? Seeing no one, then audience comments are closed, and we'll move now to committee and regional reports. Mariah?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the Eastside Human Services Forum board meeting on Wednesday, September 20th. We had two presentations. One was on the Medicaid Transformation Project done by the King County Accountable Community of Health, and it's all about innovation to work to improve health outcomes for Medicaid beneficiaries. The second presentation, and we spent a lot of time on this, is a popular topic tonight, which was the Veterans and Human Services Levy, the Veterans, Seniors and Human Services Levy. And I just wanted to point out a couple different things, and I'm following David, so that's great. That the last levy did since 2012 has helped over 35,000 people. One important piece about the Veterans and Human Services Levy from before is that now it adds seniors, a really critical, I feel, an important point. And this is something that the Eastside Human Services Forum has not decided if they're going to take an official vote and ask for support, but they may be. So I may be coming back to council during the good of the order and asking for feedback in regard to this. And I just, wanted to say, just personally, after 18 years of helping out in the human services area, that it really does take a village. So I've got like a 2-page, which is a really handy piece of information about this. So if anybody wants to see that, I can pass that out. So I was glad to see the group come and talk tonight. And then also Friends of Youth is starting a new initiative, and it's all about that there has been a decline in terms of people that are signing up to be foster parents, and they have a brand new initiative to encourage people to think about being a foster parent. I also attended the Eastside Economic Development Council of Seattle and King County on Wednesday, September 20th. And there's some interesting things in terms of partnership development around several groups, including the Economic Development Council. And there's going to be more to come and more to talk about in regard to this. I think they're right in the middle of sort of trying to figure out if it would be a good idea for some of these groups to come together to better help economic development in King County. And there were a lot of questions surrounding smaller cities outside of Seattle and how that would impact that group. So more to come in regard to that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On September 21st, I attended I chaired the Council Infrastructure Committee, and we had 3 items on that agenda that are now on the consent calendar tonight. I'll just mention them briefly. They'll be read in later, but we talked about a renewal agreement, franchise agreement with Clear Wireless. That was AB 7469. Sammamish Plateau Interlocal Agreement, AB 7468. And AB 7463 was the Washington State Department of Transportation right-of-way easement. So they're on the consent calendar tonight. There were 2 other presentations we had. One was mentioned earlier about the solid waste collection contract that's coming up. So we had our first presentation on that, on how to look at that in the future. We have a lot of time to deal with that. So options with that and how we collect waste for our citizens. And the other one, probably the most attention, was the Issaquah Hobart Road Study. Y'all remember we partnered with Issaquah, with King County to do a study on that road. At this point, they had gotten to gathering data. Okay? And so they just took that point to share the data with us. Okay? And so it's the traffic flows, where it is, where it isn't, and those pinch points of congestion. So that's what we shared at that point, and now these next couple months they will be looking to take that data and start looking at and analyzing it and what may come of that. And we don't know, but they had some ideas, some objectives on things to look at, and they will be coming back to us with suggestions in approximately 2 months or so. And that was what was on that agenda. On September 27th, I was at the Regional Transit Committee, and there we approved 3 items to move forward to council, all related to the simplifying the metro fare. So it's been talked about a bit around here, but simplifying it to $2.75 per trip, no matter where you go, so you don't have peak trips and off-peak trips and zone trips and everything else that gets people confused. Also included with that, when they did that, was 2 other items, which was to add $400,000 to the human services funding of transit passes. So they'd add more funding to get more transit passes to human services things. So that would help alleviate some of that increased cost. So some folks would have a slight increased cost. And the other one was to offset the cost of the ORCA card, also with a slight reduction in that cost. So those 3 things went from our committee to council from there. They had another one to go to as well. But they've been moving forward quite a bit, and they're working their way down. And that concludes my report.
Thanks, Bill. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Thursday, this coming Thursday, October 5th, I'll be attending the Puget Sound Regional Council's Growth Management Policy Board meeting. The primary agenda item of interest for Issaquah at this meeting will be a review of the draft of the Regional Centers Framework Update, and then possibly action to direct the staff to release the update for public comment. And then the next steps in this process would be for the board to review all public comments at our regularly scheduled November meeting. And we have an extra meeting at the end of November to discuss any further public comments and to possibly take action. Then last Thursday, on September 28th, we held a meeting of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, or LTAC. And just a reminder, earlier this year, LTAC put out an RFQ for proposals to provide event recruitment to Issaquah, events such as conferences or sporting events like the professional volleyball tournament that's now run for 3 years at the Lake Sammamish State Park, events like that, which do drive activity and business for our local hotels. We did not select any of the submittals that we received, so we've gone almost 2 years now trying to get event recruitment in place and haven't been successful. This last meeting, we have a new staff liaison, Tim Dutter, and we have kind of discussed a slightly different tactic about perhaps putting what the Roger Brooks study had recommended as a kind of like a Visit Issaquah organization, creating such a structure first, and then get into the staff that and get into the event recruitment. We're going to continue to discuss that and have another meeting before the end of October for the purpose of potentially providing that plan and its vision and a 2018 budget proposal for the council to consider before we complete this full budget process. So we'll get back to the council with the LTAC recommendation while this is still in process. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Paul. Eileen?
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the September 21st meeting of WIRA 8. We had our updates and committee reports, including a letter to Senator Murray, thanking her for her leadership in restoring the Pacific Coastal Salmon Recovery Fund, including $65 million for the program in the 2018 Senate Science Appropriation Bill. We welcoming to Colonel Giraldi, our new Army Corps of Engineer District Commander. We also reviewed the final draft of the WIRA 8 10-year plan, that's plan that updates and for approval. It's a salmon conservation plan for 10 years. Also had a briefing on the Ballot Locks Economic Impact Study and reviewed the draft regarding that one. Success stories. The success stories was a presentation from King County on a recent Bear Creek in-stream riparian habitat restoration project. And then I also attended the Kokanee Work Group. We had a report on an application of a 2D and 3D temperature modeling of Lake Sammamish. This was to help evaluate the future climate impacts of the kokanee habitat we have. We also had a quick overview of Lake Sammamish study on water quality graph and data, on the water temperatures, on bacteria, on algae, toxins, and their measurements. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Eileen. Mary Lou?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On September 14th, the Cascade Water Alliance's Resource Management Committee met. I was not in attendance, but I got an update. They focused on the elements of the Lake Taps Water Quality Work Program. Cascade Water Alliance has purchased Lake Taps sort of as an insurance policy on our water supply, and this resource group is responsible for both making sure that the water quality is maintained, and they also review contracts dealing with the operation of the dam. On September 27th, I attended the Cascade Water Alliance board meeting with the mayor, and any issues of significance to Issaquah would be reported out by the mayor. The next EFR board meeting is October 12th, 4 o'clock at the Eastside Fire and Rescue Headquarters. On the agenda items are the approval of the 2018 budget, and just as an issue of note, this agency is also proposing to eventually, maybe in the next budget cycle, move to a 2-year budget cycle as well. We got a brief introduction to a proposal for a new fee for motor vehicle accidents. We're going to get that referred to committee, and I'll bring back a report on what that might mean in the future. And we also got a briefing on the East Metro Training Group. On September 28th, I attended the King County Fire Chiefs Annual Conference on Leadership Development. I was a guest speaker representing expectations from electeds on the next generation of leadership in fire service. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Stacy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council's Land and Shore Committee will meet this Thursday at 6:30 p.m. right here in Council Chambers. On the agenda, as we have over the last year, had a moratorium update first, and then we will have next on our agenda, Agenda Bill 7317, which is vertical mixed use related to the development moratorium. Then we will have Agenda Bill 7342, which is about architectural fit and urban design, also regarding the development moratorium. Then we will have another discussion on the end of development agreements. Then we will have Agenda Bill 7326 back before us, Old Town Sub-Area Plan, which we are reviewing changes to. And then the last item is Agenda Bill 7483, 2017 amendments to the comprehensive plan. I did want to mention the Issaquah Hobart Road study to let the council know that the data that Bill has talked about is coming to council work session, I believe, October 9th. Yes, Emily's nodding her head. Yes, so we will have that data as well, the full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Briefly, I attended the Cascade Water Alliance Finance and Management Committee meeting on September 20th, where we discussed 2018 rates and charges, and the Cascade Water Alliance Board approved their recommendation on September 27th, formally adopting the 2018 rates and charges, which were no change in what was assumed in their biennial budget. And on September 29th, I attended the Sound Transit Board meeting, and we took action on several items related to link extension projects in Tacoma, West Seattle, Ballard, Linwood, and Federal Way. And that concludes my report. And I'll now ask the clerk to read the consent calendar into the record.
The consent calendar was distributed to council in advance for study. If authorized, council action will occur by single motion regarding the following items. Item A seeks approval of the accounts payables and payroll of October 2nd. Items B, C, and D seeks approval of the minutes of the work session of September 11th, the special meeting of September 18th, and the regular meeting of September 18th. Item E, AB 7317, vertical mixed use, seeks referral to Council Land and Shore Committee. Item F, AB 7357, Washington State Department of Transportation Commute Trip Reduction Agreement, seeks to accept grant. Item G, AB 7426, appointment of municipal judge, seeks to confirm. Item H, AB 7462, amending school impact fees, seeks referral to Council Services and Safety Committee. Item I, AB 7463, WashDOT right-of-way easement request, request for maintenance purposes, seeks authorization. Item J, AB 7468, interlocal agreement with Sammamish Plateau Water and Sewer District for adjusted sewer service area, seeks authorization. Item K, AB 7469, franchise agreement with Clear Wireless, seeks to adopt ordinance. If approved, the ordinance will be assigned number 2807. Item L, AB 7482, 2017 third budget amendment, seeks to set public hearing and refer to Council Services and Safety Committee. Item M, AB 7483, 2017 amendments to the Comprehensive Plan, seeks referral to Council Land and Shore Committee. This concludes the reading.
Thank you, Tisha. Have the accounts payable and payroll of October 2nd been reviewed?
They have.
Thank you. Does any council member desire to remove an item from the consent calendar and consider it separately under regular business? Stacy?
I would move to adopt the consent calendar as presented.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries unanimously. Moving now to regular business, Agenda Bill 7433, Annexation of King County Island and Establishment of Pre-Annexation Zoning. Keith Niven, Director of Development Services and Economic Vitality Divisions, for a staff update.
Your department.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Good evening. So tonight is, I'm going to give a brief presentation really to get us back into thinking about this agenda bill, and then I'm going to turn it over to you to do whatever it is you want to do with it. So just to remind you, what we're talking about is this area that's in black. And what it is it's basically been an island of unincorporated King County within the city of Issaquah. Issaquah, as you can see from our zoning map, has boundaries all the way around this property. And the reason why this has not been part of our city up until this point is the property has been owned by King County and by WashDOT. And the city took ownership of the King County parcel, and WashDOT is in agreement with annexation. So you initiated the annexation proceeding with Resolution 2017-06, and that was passed in June 6th of this year. And then we basically we started a notice of intent filed with the Boundary Review Board to be consistent with RCW 35A 14295. That calls for the holding of 2 public hearings, which we held July 17th and September 5th. And then in talking through where we were, and you've heard some public testimony tonight about process, and I'm going to take just a second to say that this has been a complicated process. It is complicated because annexations don't happen all the time, because it got even more complicated because we own one of the parcels, and it got even more complicated because we had 2 parties wanting to potentially buy part of the property that we own. So we had a very complicated conversation on September 5th that landed with the City Council not having a passed motion. And so what we've done since then has been try to nail down some of the pieces about this proposal and this agenda bill to make it easier for the City Council to have a clearer conversation about this. And so one of the things that has happened is the City Council, as you heard earlier, adopted the compact school standards. And that is important because, as you know, the school district has asked to, or has expressed an interest in potentially purchasing a piece of our property. We have also worked with the potential partner on, or our partner on, the CenturyLink TOD project. And so we also know the exact dimensions of the parcel that we would like to be zoned intensive commercial. So The administration's recommendation is, again, this parcels, and I apologize for the numbering, I noticed it after I did this, 1, 2, 3, and 5. So 1, 2, 3, and 5, this is the property we own. 4, 6, and 7 are owned by Washington State Department of Transportation. What has been identified so far is parcel 1 is the parcel that we've talked about as part of our transit-oriented development project. Parcel 3 is the potential elementary school site, if the council so desires. Parcel 4 has been discussed by our engineering department as the potential location for a new 297 zone reservoir. And then 2, 5, 6, and 7, I think at this point we see as being permanent open space. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and see what questions you might all have.
I think Paul was great. Questions?
Thank you. Keith, since we last met on September 5th, there was a meeting of the PPC. Could you, and they did look at some of the questions related to this item. Could you summarize for us what happened in that meeting?
Sure. So as we talked about, and I've identified, so as we talked about the RCWs related to annexation, what it talks about is that the city should, the ideal is for the city to have a land use vision established for an annexation before it moves into annexation. We did not have that. For the King County Island, we identified it in the comprehensive plan as being a potential annexation area and something that we expected to come into the city, but we did not include any land use direction on our land use map. And so what staff did is, after consulting with the city attorney, we went ahead and changed the agenda item at the Planning Policy Commission to have a conversation with them about what would be the appropriate land use for the island to make a recommendation to the City Council. And so that was included in the update of the agenda bill. So, and I can talk about that if you would like for me to talk about their recommendation. So because all of the property is publicly owned currently. We own a parcel and WashDOT owns the other parcels. Their take on it was that they should make a recommendation for community facilities for all of the properties. So when we talk about zoning, we actually talk about the next layer down from that. So within community facilities, there could be community facilities or community facilities open space, and we've kind of debated back and forth the appropriate designation for different parcels within that community facilities designation. The only nuance is the Planning Policy Commission did not recommend commercial for what's parcel 1 on this map. And that was the only place they differed from the administration's recommendation. The reason why they did not identify or want to support the commercial on parcel 1 is because they felt like they did not know enough about the transit-oriented development project to provide a different recommendation for that. But they recognized as part of their motion that if the council had more information or saw that differently, that they expected you guys to make that decision.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Stacy?
Keith, there's a memo in the packet, my original packet. I didn't look on the website. The memo regarding the PPC's recommendation under scenario 2 says that PPC recommended a land use designation of CFF for the entire parcel. So that's not correct?
That's not correct. So CFF would actually be a zone. They actually recommended CF, so community facilities for the island.
And so there was a corrected memo that came out today.
There was.
Did that get updated and onto the city website, into the agenda packets? Great, thank you.
Other questions of Keith? Stacy?
I'm going to make a motion. Do you have questions?
I did.
Oh, I thought nobody had questions.
Oh. Mariah?
So, Keith, I just wanted to clarify, when the PCC, when they were talking about vision for annexation, were they talking in general that there should be a vision for any annexation that would happen, or just that they hadn't had an opportunity to put the vision together for this particular annexation?
So with this annexation, so what the administration recommended was CF for parcels 2 through 7 on this map, but to do commercial for parcel 1, because we knew that part of the transit-oriented development project was to relocate CenturyLink's garage/offices to the bottom of this property. And you guys have executed a couple memorandums of understanding related to that project, that would be commercial, but the rest would be community facilities. Because we have not done a TOD presentation to PPC, they did not have that level of understanding of the potential use for parcel 1. So they went ahead and just said all of the parcels 1 through 7 should all be community facilities.
So that was my second question, that they had not seen the presentation or any presentation on transit-oriented development.
They have not yet. I offered that we would be more than happy to give them a presentation if they wanted to do that at one of their future meetings, but no, they had not had it up to this point.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, another question?
Yeah, a question about, before we move on to a potential motion. In the packet today, there is a memo from our city attorney. And I took a look at that. It explains kind of, it's titled, well, it talks about kind of a pathway forward from where we were on September 5th. We had a letter from you, Jim, on September 9th that looks really similar to this. But I noticed they're different, and I wanted to hear what is the difference between these, if there's anything that of note that we should be aware of. But it's not the exact same memo, but it looks like it covers a lot of the content is the same.
Yes, as you'll recall, I wrote a memo to the council that was an attorney-client privileged memo that I submitted on September 9th, and I was asked to prepare a document which was for public consumption. I believe we talked about it at council leadership, if you'll recall. And so this document was a little bit pared down from a lot of the nuances that I believe I put in the original memo. And so this memo was one that I did simply for a public memo that laid out the essentials but didn't go into as much detail.
Okay, thank you for that. And just for full disclosure, I didn't see anywhere in your September 9th email or on the letter itself that it said it was for privileged, attorney-client privilege.
Well, I suppose that I probably should have put more into that, but I know I was asked if we should disclose that memo in its entirety, and I was a little bit concerned about all of the contents, and so I was asked to prepare a version which was a little more streamlined, and that's what this is.
Okay, so there's no material,
There's no material.
because you get to the options of moving forward, it looks pretty much the same.
Correct.
Okay, so it's just the backstory stuff. All right, thank you.
Other questions? Mary Lou?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Keith, in the packet we have tonight, it talks about parcel 3 being 6.6 acres. And not having the other information on what the compact school standards look like. Is that a number that came directly from that packet and included the 90% impervious and the tree retention, and it's 6.6 is where it lands?
So, yes and no. So so with the compact school regulations in place, the school district, because, there's also some critical area limitations on this parcel, their belief is they need approximately 7 acres. And you say, well, how come this is only 6.6? Well, there's actually the parcel due north of this is city-owned now, and what they would do is it actually would bleed into this parcel a little bit as well, because what that does is it allows this to be bigger, which from a visual standpoint, as you come around this corner of I-90, having more trees left in this location seems an advantage from an aesthetic perspective. So we've been supportive of the school and doing a boundary, it'd be ultimately a boundary line adjustment to include some parcel that some property we currently own where the pond is. You know where the pond is? Mm-hmm. So there's some space in between this parcel line and the pond where they could actually kind of push the school up by another half of an acre onto this other parcel.
Okay, so follow-up question? The question and a comment, and or maybe it's 2 comments, I don't know. I guess I'm not concerned that we actually still don't have certainty on the parcel size, because that would have caused a lot of concern with some council members the last time it was here. So not knowing if it's 6.6 or 7, okay, I'm glad you brought that up, but that's not a huge concern. I would ask that any kind of adjustments that are made, understanding how much concern citizens have expressed about this, if it's something administrative like a boundary line adjustment, I really, would want to make sure that your council is advised and informed of this, because again, it kind of seems like we're being asked maybe to make a decision tonight, and it might look different. And so if the school's asking for more land or something like that, that kind of throws a little bit of uncertainty back into the picture again tonight.
So because you are the landowner of both all of this as well as this land to the north, that decision will ultimately have to come back to you in the form of a short plat and boundary line adjustment.
And that comes to council.
It will. And then it will come back to you again when and if they offer to buy that land from us. You guys would ultimately have to make a decision to sell that. So you guys get 2 more touches on this if you decide to zone parcel 3 CFF.
Thank you.
Other questions? Stacy?
So I'm going to look at Jim a little bit. Do I renew or do I make a new motion? Either one?
You can simply make a motion.
Okay. And is this the same one? Okay. I would move to adopt revised ordinance number 2803, annexing certain property known as the King County Island, establishing pre-annexation zoning of said property as presented. It says in Exhibit V, I'm going to be specific about page 528 of the ordinance, requiring assumption of existing indebtedness and establishing an effective date.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Discussion or further questions?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. I know last time when we went through this process, we also, before we voted or discussed, had to go through a series of questions about disclosures. And I'm not sure, I have 2 questions. 1, do we need to repeat that process? And 2, is there an opportunity to provide comment if we don't repeat that process?
If you have any disclosures that are different from the last time, then yes, you should disclose those now.
Prior to having a
Yes.
conversation. Okay. Mr. Mayor? I wanted to make just a general statement before we started with our deliberations today. So as a council member and a candidate in this fall's election, I have been meeting with residents almost every day. I was asked to meet with a dozen or so neighbors about city issues in the Highlands, including a request to explain the city's process with regard to annexing land into the city and selling that land to others. I advised both the resident who invited me before the meeting and the attendees at the meeting that I could talk about many things, but there were 2 items I could not talk about. Those items were anything to do with this agenda bill that is in front of us this evening and that was discussed in our first meeting in September with regards to pre-annexation zoning for King County and any parcel that the Issaquah School District might be interested in buying related to this annexation. They were fine with that. When someone at the meeting looked like they wanted to comment on either of those, I asked them to stop and reminded them that all 7 council members, or 6 that are here this evening, sit as judges on this issue, and we need to decide on the same body of information. This was not an issue for them at the meeting. The topics at this meeting were similar to questions I get asked at most forums while doorbelling, and also at neighborhood gatherings. I also subscribe to the Issaquah Daily Blog, an online blog which recently posted a flyer on Friday issued by the Issaquah School District. I saw this on the blog, and as far as I know, it's not part of the officially submitted record for the public hearing. It was issued after the closing of the public hearing, and I'm not aware that it contained any new information. We as council have also received numerous emails from residents since our meeting in September on these 2 topics, currently covered under the agenda bill and the quasi-judicial process. I have filed all these on my computer but have not read these emails since the hearing was closed. I've reviewed my attendance at community meetings and the discussions I have had with residents since our first meeting in September with our city attorney. I just wanted to make sure that all these contacts were appropriate during a quasi-judicial process. I was advised today that they were.
Thank you. Additional discussion or questions? Paul?
So Jim, thank you. I'm going to go back to your email and your letter. You talk about options for path going forward. One of the things I learned since September 5th that when we consider a motion and it doesn't pass, that doesn't necessarily mean the question fails. It means the motion failed. And so your email explained options available to us. So I think I'm trying to understand what just happened with the motion that came. How does it fit within the context? Is that the exact same motion we experienced or considered? Excuse me. I guess this is for Stacy as much as anything. Is that the exact same motion we considered back on September 5th?
No. Didn't go back and compare language, the exact language.
So Jim, you tried to address, so I'm just wondering where we are. I mean, you laid out, it can be the same thing, it can be different, it can be something, a third option. So I'm trying to see how that all fits into this process.
Right. When a motion fails, all it means is that the motion has failed. Anyone can make a new motion. So until you make an affirmative motion, until you make an actual motion to deny something or to take an affirmative action, no action has been taken. In this case, all that was done on September 5 was that a motion was made to approve the ordinance with specific zoning. That was, I think the motion was amended several times, but ultimately it ended up to be a motion to approve the ordinance with specific zoning, and that motion failed 1-5. And all that means is that that motion failed. At that point, anyone could have made a motion to do something different if they wanted to do it. Anyone could have, under Robert's rules, you can't make the same motion at the same session, but you can renew the motion and make the same motion at a subsequent session. Or you can make a new motion because the motion that was on the floor failed. So I realize it's a nuance of parliamentary procedure, and frankly, I think most parliamentary procedure is far too complicated to be used in city council meetings. But the parliamentary procedure was meant for large bodies, and it wasn't really meant for an organization as small as a city council, which has 7 members. But the point is that when a motion fails, all it means is that the motion has failed. And so the appropriate 3 motions or options that I laid out for you were, One, you could renew the motion. Someone could make the same motion that failed at this meeting. That's allowed under Robert's rules. Second, because the motion that was made on September 5 failed, any new motion is appropriate. And so if there is a motion that is different from what was made on September 5, that would be an appropriate motion as well. And I believe that the last option I laid out was a motion whereby you, trying to remember my third option here. Excuse me, let me pull.
A totally, completely different kind of zoning.
Yes, it would be to annex the property without establishing pre-annexation zoning. And under the city's code, when that happens, when you annex the property without establishing pre-annexation zoning, it comes in with the most comparable city zoning, and then it is eligible for you to go through a rezone process to ultimately zone it the way you want. So the three options are, one, make the same motion as last time, which was to adopt the pre-annexation zoning as it was in the last motion. Second, make a new motion that adopts pre-annexation zoning that doesn't have to be the same as was made on September 5th. Or third, just limit your motion to annexation, in which case the property will come in with the most comparable city zoning to the county zoning.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then the motion in front, so I noticed that it does already have an ordinance number in it. And so that's the same ordinance that we were considering. And then just for clarification, Stacey, I appreciate you giving the page number, but there are multiple Exhibit Bs in the packet below it. So one of them is the whole city, and one of them is this map, or something similar to this map. So
Right, so it's actually Exhibit B of Exhibit J.
Well,
to be
that's the part I missed.
super clear. So if you find Exhibit J, which is the ordinance, it's Exhibit B to Exhibit J.
You change your motion?
Yeah, as soon as I find it.
And it is actually the last page of the agenda bill for this item, as I understand it. Page 528.
If that's the intent, then I understand the intent.
Oh, is it?
That's what I said, page 528.
It's actually the same map is in the packet twice, but Exhibit B to the ordinance is on page 457, but it is the same map as is on page 528.
Well, if I need to revise the motion, okay.
Well,
Same. Okay.
Mariah?
So I just wanted to follow up when we were in regard to, I too have been out talking to many members of the community as I'm running for election, and I did sit in a forum for City Council where questions came from people walking in the door. One of the questions had to do with the role of City Council in finding land for schools and the role of the school board. I had an opportunity to talk with Jim about my answer. My answer focused on compact schools and what we had talked about in our last council session. So I just wanted to make sure that I had that out there as well.
Other questions or discussion? No? Oh, Mary Lou.
Oh, no, I've already spoken. Let Bill go.
ahead.
That's great.
No?
Also, just to be clear, this has been a very long and complicated process before it was quasi-judicial officially, at least in my mind. So there's been a lot of discussion about this. And when we're acting quasi-judicially, to me, it's a much higher standard of ethics that we're supposed to apply here. We're supposed to be on the record and dealing with just items on the record, not with our biases and prejudgments. And I just want to say that's an almost impossible thing for me to do tonight, because I have those in there, and because this has been long and hard, those are there, and I'm just, that's where I am. It's a very difficult thing to step that up at this point, not just step into a place where you have a record, you look at the record, and you deal with it. This has been much more involved than that, and there's been a lot of items in the community, as many as others have mentioned, and I'm out in the community quite a bit too. So there's been a lot of that going on, and I can't list them all. You did an amazing list, Mary Lou. But that's there, and I'm just going to say I don't think I can quite be as perfectly clear in the quasi-judicial way as I think I should be to my ethical standards. It's just a statement of fact.
Other questions or discussion? Mary Lou, did you have a comment? A question?
I have a comment, so if there's questions, I'll wait. If there's still questions.
I don't understand, so I have a question.
Bill, I don't understand what you said. Are you abstaining?
Well, I've been told pretty much that I cannot, and I don't know what to say to that. So I'm a statement of fact that I don't think I can do my job here as well as I expect me to do my job, but I've been told that I cannot not do it. So I'm just going to say that I wanted to put that on the record.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, is this time that we could actually make statements for or against the motion on the table before we vote? I was going to make a statement.
Sure.
Oh, thanks.
If there are no additional questions,
Yeah.
So you're up.
Oh, great, thanks. So I'm in support of the motion that's on the table this evening. In looking through the packet, I agree with staff that parcel 1 should be zoned intensive commercial, which I am in disagreement with the Planning Policy Commission's rationale for that. I do agree that proposed designation for parcel 3 of CFF is appropriate. I'm a little shocked that we still don't know the size, but we have a ways to go. And this is an extremely unusual process and actually very difficult vote as well. The reason I'm supporting the CFF on that parcel 3 at this point in time is because the school and the community is in a crisis. We do not have enough seats in our schools right now. And typically, I would totally, in most normal circumstances, follow our past practice, which would be to bring it in with the zoning most similar to the county. But I think we have extraordinary circumstances here. So I am in support of the CFF on parcel 3. And also a couple of follow-up comments are that you know, the school district is still going to proceed with their own process, and they've been able to hear, the majority of the board is here this evening, a variety of serious concerns related to lack of school capacity, erosion and slide hazard concerns with the parcel we're looking at, access to hospital emergency routes, negative impacts on adjacent neighborhoods. And these all need to be evaluated during their due diligence process. So if they are to come to the city and make an offer on the property, there's a lot of concerns out there that need to be addressed. And just want the public to know they will not be coming back to council to be addressed. They will be addressed at school board meetings and worked through the school board's community process. I have asked the council president whether or not it makes sense, since we were the body that received an enormous number of comments both before and after the public hearing closed, whether or not that information should be passed on to the school district, since we had residents who were confused with the process, did not understand whether it was our public hearing or the school board's public hearing to talk to, and they took the time and effort and energy to write us, to talk to us, to stay late into the evening, and I want to make sure that their voice is heard as this process continues with the school board. So I'm excited that staff and the administration was able to present a much clearer picture this evening, and I'm supportive of the proposal that you've shown. Thank you.
Stacy?
Thank you. So I have several things I want to talk about. The first one is the process. Actually, the first one is that, Keith, you've buried the lead about the administration will move forward with a short plan on the city parcel to create the 4 parcels as shown in the map, and the city council gets to decide that. This is, that was not, that process, that procedure has not been talked about. But this has been, I'll call it a very tortured process, and there's several reasons for that. Number one is the choice that was made that this was going to be quasi-judicial. That's a very difficult process. It is not the same as legislative, where that's 99.9% of our decisions are made legislatively. We can talk to each other as long as we don't have a quorum. We can talk to the public as many times as we want to, and we're just kind of free to discuss. We don't have the benefit of that. We are hearing each other's comments for the very first time on September 5th, and then another round of comments from each other tonight. So that is, if you've ever tried to make decisions almost totally in the dark, I know it looks awkward for you to sit and watch us be so awkward, because it is very awkward. And I just do not, there was another way. I think there was another way. But that's not the decision that was made. We also could have started this process many, many, many months ago and not have the school concept daylighted in July. Both the district and city staff have known about more details than the council has known for a very long time. And so as we sit here, it has felt to me like we're trying to, put a square peg in a round hole, because it hasn't been framed very well, it hasn't been explained very well, and there are going to be two very, very important council touches that we hadn't talked about. And those are, I've thought about this every single day since September 5th. So if anybody thinks that that we don't take our decisions seriously, then you would be wrong, because these are very important decisions, I'm sure, to all of us, including me. I also think that the messaging has been the wrong messaging. The message has been, please zone to allow for a school. That's not the right message. The message really is what the district would like to do because of the process, where the district is in the process. I watched the PPC meeting, the 90 minutes, and I have a quote from Lisa Callan that says exactly where the district is in this process. The district has done, and I listened to it a few times, and I was in communications journalism for a long time, so this is an exact quote, Lisa. The district has done extensive land searches for suitable land that would be on the initial checkbox list of what would be suitable for the district to try to do a deeper dive. So what the district wants us to do, and what the city staff has asked us to do, is to zone this in a way that allows the district to continue to do the deeper dive. I think that's very, very important. That is different from, please zone it CFF so the district can build a school. That's very different. The process going forward would be what Keith mentioned, and that is that the city could, and probably will, if this is passed, start a short plat process, which is a subdivision, code 18.13, and because it's the city owns the property, the council gets to decide what happens to that property. I don't know when that would come forward. I don't know who would be sitting up here. And then the next step would be, if we get to that point where there is a request to buy the land, then the council has another touch, and the council gets to decide whether or not it wants to sell the land to the school district at whatever price has been negotiated. So we have two significant touches. Because of that, I made the motion because I support it. And I'm comfortable with that because of the touches that have to come back. I also support the intensive commercial because the city has made some obligations already, and there are future decisions to be made about that. The city, I think, also has a survey. Keith told PPC we also have definite boundaries for that. But different reason, we have obligations that we need to live up to in terms of further exploring. And there is a potential huge grant that is that needs to be applied for. And unless we show our good faith in meeting our obligations under the 2 MOUs that we've already signed, then I think that that project is dead in the water. And I don't want to see that happen. We've not taken a vote on any of that, but it needs to continue to move forward. So I do, board member, Issaquah School District Board member Meraldo came to the council and asked us whether the city was compliant with an RCW. And I looked, computer's not working very well, so I tried to find that again while I was here tonight, but I couldn't find it. However, I did ask on September 6th, the day after the meeting, I did ask whether we are compliant with that, and I don't have an answer back yet, but I wanted you to know that I have asked. I do have concerns about the site. I have some of the concerns resonated with me, and so I'm glad that district administration and board members are here to hear, and have been here to hear what the community has been concerned about. The access, I've been up there, I live up there, it's a concern. We've got Grand Ridge that's deep in the middle of Issaquah Highlands, and traffic is a concern, and I think traffic would be a concern at this site as well. That's not what we're judging here tonight. But because there are 2 more council decision-making points, you're going to get a lot of questions, I would imagine. So, like I said, I want to make, I'm going to wait. I have another comment to make, but at least I wanted to thank you for being so clear in where the district is with the process, because that made me feel comfortable, combined with, like I said, the 2 more council touches that we have. Thank you.
Mariah?
So I wanted to just echo some of the comments that have been talked about already. I really do feel that we have a great need for schools in Issaquah, and it's really reached a crisis point, and so much of that has been tied into this. The process has been so incredibly difficult to get through. It's been complicated, it seemed rushed, and it's just not the way that I would envision that we would want. I wouldn't want to go through this again. I would really like to see more planning. I talked about the fact that I really do think that council and the school board should be meeting more often than they are. That would be important to me, and I hope that the school board is able to go forward and do all of the deep dives and the due diligence that they'll need to do, because there have been just so many concerns that have come to us in terms of traffic and stability and emergency access and all of that. So I'm supporting this, but this was just really difficult to get through. Very complicated matter. So, and the quasi-judicial piece of it just made it harder to not be able to really talk about that. On the flip side, I also wanted to mention that I feel comfortable with the IC zoning that is for something that will allow the transit-oriented development project to go through. Once I heard that the PCC was, they were talking about that because they hadn't had a touch with that. They hadn't had a presentation. We've had several, and just through my time on economic vitality, I would say that that's something that I feel comfortable with. So I'll be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Are you ready to act? Paul?
A couple comments. Thank you. Just a reminder, too, for the record, our first touch on this was July 17th, and it's absolutely wonderful, the whole different tenor and atmosphere that's here this evening compared to that evening on July 17th. And I really think with all the public comments that were made during the public hearing on the 17th and again on the 5th, and all the emails that have been submitted and are part of the public record, I think I want to commend people for speaking out, because all of us have heard quite a few voices, many for, some against, all offering, I think, valuable input and helping all parties involved better understand the concerns of the citizens. So I think this process since July has really changed quite a bit, and I'm really pleased what I'm hearing tonight, because this is kind of a stage that back on September 5th that I had hoped to achieve back then. So I'm glad that the focus is now back on doing what's right for our community, for our schools, for our families, both now and into the future. I probably will stand out as a little bit different than the rest as well, at least those have spoken. I haven't, there's many items, but I haven't really found this that confusing. I've understood what we are doing. I've known that annexation, we've done annexation before. I know about the zoning restrictions. We've covered that stuff before. I think it's been through conversation. The first proposal actually isn't this. There was community facilities back in July that was presented to us, where there is open space now. We took the zoning off, we put it back on. I think the council has made this process pretty confusing, but there's zoning, there's the question of annexation, there is zoning, there's a potential subplat, there's the use of those. It's related to the TOD, and we've also known that going forward that there are other steps. There is potential sale. There is due diligence of the school district. So I think those have been out in front of us. I'm glad that we've had the more time. I'm glad to hear my colleagues coming around and thinking that, that we can make this work. It's not a final, this is just a decision we're considering tonight about annexation. It indicates that our intent to move in a certain direction, but the final conclusion has not been cast yet. And so I'm glad we're taking that step, and I'm going to be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Bill?
I'd like to thank Council President Goodman for stating all you did there earlier very well, all your concerns and statement of the process, and just iterate a couple of those. That I think the question got framed poorly with the community, that as the council was here to approve a new school location, and that stirred up a lot of concern and process issues of what that means. And as you mentioned, that's not what we're doing here tonight by any means. We're just allowing one step in a process with a lot more things to go. And as we've heard from many members of the community, there are a lot of concerns still with this if it's going to get to that point. Traffic and open space and all those issues and so forth. I don't reiterate them here, but there's a lot to deal with. So I am concerned about that. It has been an awkward and concerned and compressed, almost crisis-like process because of pressure on ourselves as a city and from the school district and so forth, that this has to be done right now. And I think we could have done much better as a city and a council. That I would like to see us improve a lot more. I'd like to work with the school district more often. I think I've been on the council here long enough and only had one meeting officially with the school district. I'd like to come and talk to you folks, but I haven't been able to for the last few months because of this process. I think we need to do that much more ahead of time than as in what's happened here. So, thank you.
Eileen?
Thank you. I will be supporting this annexation this evening. It's been compressed. There's been a lot of information that's been brought forward. But this is, hopefully it does go forward and become a school. I do some work in the school district, and it's amazing how they'll open up a new school, and almost instantly they're already in portables. and it just doesn't seem to stop. So I know the need is there, and hopefully that this will be one more step in which we can get to a little bit better education for our kids, which is already a fabulous education, but portables sometimes are not the best of offers. So I'll be supporting this evening, and hopefully we'll have some new schools soon.
Mary Lou?
I just wanted to clarify one thing that Councilmember Winterstein said. I got the impression that there may be thought out there that it took council members time to come around to whether or not we needed new schools or they were important, and that's just absolutely not true. I speak for myself, but you can see head nods from the other council members. We need to have the information in front of us so we understand, so we can make the right decision. So thank you for being here, and I want you to understand, because most of our school board and our superintendent here, you haven't got anybody up on this council who doesn't recognize the crisis, and anyone on this council who doesn't support schools. Thank you for what you do.
I think everyone has had an opportunity to speak at least once. Stacy?
So I was just going to ask if so I have one last comment, sort of question. That's not related to the motion. I mean, it's related to the agenda bill, but it's not related to the motion. So I can either make it now, or do we vote and then I say it afterwards? It's up to you.
You can say it now.
Okay.
Let's simplify things.
Okay, all right.
Let's take care of this in its entirety this evening, except when it comes back to the council for 2 additional touches.
Sure. So, so we've talked a lot, we've heard a lot of comments about the district and the city working better together to plan for schools. And cities plan for growth and are supposed to accommodate for growth. And the district has a little narrower role in that you're planning and building schools. And we all want to work together, and I think we've started to do a better job at that. And you came to us with a request to change code, which we did, and we're glad we can, I think we are all glad that we can help make it easier for you. We plan differently. I realize, we plan on, the city plans on like 20, 30-year planning horizon. But the district plans for schools when the population is actually here. I don't have much detail about what you do, but when you're planning for when a population is already here, the district is, then it seems to me that there's a sort of an inherent behindness. So, so I get that we're not necessarily on the same page. That makes it very, very difficult. I also know that you have, as I understand it, all of that data that we have about growth, and that district and city staff do talk. So I have an uncomfortable question, and but you do what we do. You sit up and you listen to uncomfortable questions sometimes. So my question is, how? I don't know the answer, and it's just kind of rhetorical. How do we get to the place where we're at the place where we are now, where certain schools are so woefully overcrowded? I don't know why, and I'm not suggesting that there is this magic answer. But I would think that there is an opportunity at this point, just as you have asked us to change our code and have wanted to work together for us, and have suggested maybe we're not doing everything we can do, or things that we should maybe not complying with things. My question for the board and the district is, maybe this is an opportunity at this time for you all to have a conversation about whether your policies need to be reviewed. I don't know the answer to that, and I'm not suggesting they do. But I've been asked that question many times on council about why the city allows the schools to get so overcrowded. I don't have control over that. And I know that you don't largely have control over that too. But I think it's an opportune time to revisit that. And I also think it would be a great service to the community to let them know what happens behind the tent, because I don't know, and I would imagine that most people don't know. They think it's our fault. But I can tell you that I don't think the answer is overcrowding crises get laid before us in council chambers, that somehow we failed to plan, because I think we have to do it together, really do it together. And as we're asking ourselves tough questions about how we can do it better, I would suggest that maybe this is the time for you all to ask questions. So that was just my comment.
Thank you. Paul?
I appreciate those comments very much, Stacy, and I agree. And I think this, you can say we're in the middle of something right now, which we're trying to make up for some lost ground because of the overcrowding that has today. And maybe a form of that can take in the future is whether you have a policy or procedures, and I'm addressing the school board and the superintendent right now. We do. I would welcome that as well. We do have a forecast or where we expect to funnel growth into the future. And I hope that the city, the administration, the council, and everyone is willing to, and I think I've had this conversation just in general with Keith as well, is some forward-looking planning about what the needs might be and what we together can do to get in front of and not be caught in the same situation again. I don't know what that looks like, but I echo Councilmember Goodman's request, and I would gladly participate with you.
Are you ready to vote?
Yep.
All those in favor of adopting revised ordinance number 2803, annexing certain property known as the King County Island, establishing pre-annex zoning of said property as presented in Exhibit B on page 457 of the ordinance, requiring assumption of existing indebtedness and establishing an effective date, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries unanimously. Moving now to Agenda Bill 7431, 2018 Community Fund Grant Recommendations. And before we get to that, we're going to take a, oh my gosh, the time sure flies when you're having fun. Be back in your seats, please, at quarter till.
I'm way over here. This is new.
We're back in regular session at 9:49. With that, our next item is Agenda Bill 7431, 2018 Community Fund Grant Recommendations. This is coming back from the Administration and the Services and Safety Committee. City Administrator Bob Harrison will provide a staff update.
Thank you, Mayor. So this did go to the Services Committee, and all the various grantees did have the opportunity to do a full-blown presentation to the Services Committee. At that meeting was the Chair Tola Martz and Mariah Batiste, right?
Nope, me.
And, oh yeah, that's right. And I was going to say Stacy Goodman was Eileen, and then Stacy Goodman was filling in for Mariah. And so we had the opportunity to do that review, and we'll show you the recommendations based on the original recommendations from the mayor, and then what the Services Committee forwarded out. But before we did that, one of the questions that came up, which the committee asked we review with the council, is the criterion that we use with the community fund. And so there is a process that we go through. The city issues an RFP. Those partners end up submitting those requests for proposals for funding with a detailed description of the project. And then there's a variety of staff that work with, very closely and directly with those various agencies that receive the funding, and they do the evaluation of the recommendations, and they provide that final recommendation to the mayor's office, which Fred and I then review with that team for the final recommendations. So as part of that criterion that the staff uses in scoring the applications, it meets these, they look at these various items. So first of all, it furthers the city's mission to support a sustainable, safe, and vibrant community. The project strengthens the city partnership to support the community. Project provides organizational learning, development, and mission completion. The project demonstrates compelling reason to engage in capacity building work. There's relevant technical, managerial, and staff ability and capacity demonstrated. There's a strategy for achieving and measuring impact provided. The applicant demonstrates outcomes and strong performance, and the costs are detailed with good estimates. And based on that criterion and that evaluation, those projects were evaluated with funding. So here's the list. The recommendation reflects, and I'll go through the mayor's recommendation and then the Services and Safety Committee recommendation so that you're aware. So Art East, for maintaining sustainability for the Art East education program, there was a $15,000 request. The mayor's recommendation was $10,000, and the Services Committee also concurred with that at $10,000. At Work, for staff training and professional development, there was $18,200 requested. Mayor recommended $15,000, and the committee also recommended $15,000. Cougar Mountain Zoo for computer hardware and software upgrades. There was a $17,503 request with $5,000 from the mayor's office recommended, and the Services Committee, following that presentation from the zoo, recommended that the city increased that contribution to $10,000. There's a $5,000 adjustment. Eastside Baby Corner had requested $17,750. Recommendation from mayor was $15,000, and $15,000 from the as well from the Services Committee. Friends of Lake Sammamish State Park, there was a request for $30,000. The previous funding had been at $25,000. The mayor had recommended $20,000, and then the Services Committee had recommended matching the original request, so that would have been $30,000. So that's a $5,000 increase from this year's funding level, but it's $10,000 variance in the city's funding. The mayor's recommended funding. And then the balance there, Highlands Council for Blakely Hall Conference Room remodel, they had requested $10,000. This mayor had recommended $7,500, and the committee recommended $7,500 as well. Issaquah Alps Trail Club, this would be the first year we funded that organization, had requested $22,000 for outreach and engagement. The mayor had recommended 10, and the committee had recommended 10,000 as well. The Tavan Center for fundraising and constituent management software, their request was for 20. The recommendation from the mayor was 5,000, and the committee agreed with that at $5,000. And then the Village Theater, which has kind of been for a new Issaquah production warehouse. When they originally applied last year, they kind of laid out a goal for the city of about $100,000 for funding, which, we said we can't give you 100, but we do though is have this process where you can apply for these funds on an annual basis. And so, we would suggest that you in your original application, you can talk about it further, that you talk about it as kind of a 4-year arrangement. So it's $25,000 a year for 4 years to meet that arrangement. Again, the council can't commit future councils to funding. So, our recommendation again was at $25,000 for this level. So this fund's a little bit, yes?
There's a mistake in the agenda bill on the Village Theater when it says Services and Safety Committee recommendation $2,500. It should be $25,000.
Should be $25,000. Okay, thank you for catching that. I'm sorry.
It's right down below, it's wrong up above, yeah.
So, there were a couple of questions last year regarding the fund and what it's set up for. Now, this is a different fund than some of the other funding the city provides to our partners. So the Human Services Commission, for example, we offer human services grants. There's a full-blown process, and usually those programs are with human services providers that are providing a direct service to whatever the clientele that they serve at. So we've got that pot of money. There's also the LTAC. So even though there weren't any grants awarded in the past, if it meets certain criterion, there are some grants that could be awarded through the LTAC committee that meets those recommended awards. The Arts Commission is another option, and a couple of these agencies have gotten funding through the Arts Commission for different types of programs. So there are opportunities for some of these agencies, dependent upon the program and what they're proposing, to get funding for those other potential programs. So with that, and I don't know if Eileen or Stacy want to speak to the variance since Tola's not here this evening, the funding requests from the Cougar Mountain Zoo or the Friends of Lake Sammamish State Park
Sure.
as a committee.
If we're going to speak to that, should I make a motion first?
Sure, that would be great.
Did anybody have questions first before I?
Oh, and I did forget one thing. Thank you. So at the meeting that night, we were at the final stages of finalizing the budget, and I did mention that night as long as there's changes that are within reason, that we would be able to incorporate those into the final mayor's budget based on the committee, because we got an earlier start this year. And so the good news is we were able to incorporate the committee's recommendations into the budget, so that extra $15,000, essentially the Services and Safety Committee recommendations reflect the funding that's in the budget that got presented this evening to you.
I would move to approve the 2018 Community Fund recommendations as amended by the Council Services and Safety Committee for inclusion in the 2018 budget.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Stacy?
I just want to make a couple of quick comments. As I recall, Tola suggested an additional $5,000 to the Cougar Mountain Zoo because they had nothing last year. I think that was the reason. And I requested an increase for Friends of Lake Sammamish, the Friends Group for Lake Sammamish State Park, from 20 to 30. The reason being that, this is, I think, what I stated there, or what I did state there, is it seems to be punishing that group to get less than they got last year for a group that's been, I can't imagine any group that's been more successful than the Friends of Lake Sammamish State Park. And they had asked for an increase for additional hours for their executive director because they need those additional hours in order to grow. And there's a lot of work that executive director needs to do to prepare for grants, projects, in order to go out for donations, and they don't have enough time right now to do that. She doesn't have enough time right now to do that. So those are the reasons that those amounts were recommended to be increased, and the committee supported those 3-0. And I guess the only other comment I want to make, maybe it's clear to the council, but not clear to the public, is that these are recommendations that go into the budget, and then we further deliberate on the budget over the next couple months.
Thank you. Other questions or discussion? Paul?
Could either Stacy or Eileen, who participated in the committee review of these, speak to, or maybe even staff, because the administration, even original recommendations, did not recommend anything for Imagine Housing or life enrichment options in particular. I just would like to hear what about those applications that didn't fit the criteria.
So on the LEO, this was a very new step in their progress. It's kind of a completely new program. They were looking at finding essentially a development professional to help raise funds in the future. And the amount of the request at that time was fairly significant. And so our conversations with Leo was that perhaps a smaller incremental step would have been a way to fund a smaller incremental step, or a way to find some partnership money rather than having the city pay for the majority of the cost of the development officer would have been a good first step. And so that's why we just felt like the Leo House just wasn't quite ready yet for the city funding under that proposal. But we did say we'd work with them over this next year to see how we could maybe get them to that level. And then in terms of was it the Imagine Housing? Mm-hmm. It just felt that was the replacement of the balconies wasn't, yeah, it wasn't capacity building. So there's some of the other, it was like a maintenance type of proposal. The Village Theater, for example, which would be a comparable kind of capital improvement that we've done in the past, there was some enhancement capacity for the Village Theater in terms of being able to produce their programming. So it was slightly different than what was proposed by the Imagine Housing program.
Did either of you have or Stacy have anything to add?
No.
Did you guys talk about this?
I think it was presented very well, especially for the Imagine Housing. That was a difficult one, but it was definitely following our process.
Okay. The one just to follow that on, I remember when this formerly known as the Mayor's Fund set of recommendations, just had to mention that. When we established this criteria, one of the things to do was the idea that we wanted it to be known that it could be for capacity development and expansion. So that concept I think is relatively new in this process, that it could be about the development of staff, for example, or some capacity of the organization. So that was relatively new. I hope we don't make it just that. But one of the things I do see in the list then is that by changing the process, making an application, and remember one of the goals was from your staff team that recommended this last year, was that we might catch some organizations that we hadn't before. And there's a number of them here. So it went through the vetting process and through the council committee process. So I'm actually glad to see that, because I know we didn't know going in whether or not we would continue to fund the same or there'd be some change. And there's clearly, the word is getting out there and there's some change. So I'm really glad to see that. I think that's an indication to me that the process is working per our intent. was to get a wider look at the needs of capital and capacity building needs of more nonprofits so that we can make a fair assessment of their application. So it's reflected in this list.
Bill?
Yes, I'm glad to hear it seemed like a more organized process this year, which is nice because that's some of the concerns from last year. And a couple questions through that. Did you look back, did the Human Services Commission look at these at all, or you just did services and safety and your city group and then the Service and Safety Committee, correct?
Yeah, so the Human Services Commission doesn't look at these. These are a different pot. They look at the Human Services Commission grants, and that, as you may know, we've worked for a long time to get that up to like $10 per capita funding, which is kind of where they're at now.
Right. And so then I guess one of the advantages of this type of funding, in addition to our Human Services Commission funding, is to fill those gaps, really look at that in comparison to who and what they're funding. And sometimes there's gaps that don't fit well under that program that would fit better under this program, and the capacity kind of or stuff that's a lot more towards the service side, maybe. And so we'd want to look at how these compare back to each other and look at some of those gaps in what's being provided, because sometimes we'd see that. So we don't want to have the same organizations getting through there and then coming through here. And so we want to look to get that broadened and hit those areas that doesn't hit. So these complement each other and add better work. So I will hope that we're looking back at that with the Human Services Commission when they do their process, I think, this year also, right, coming up, to just someone just go back and look at the two together and how they line up and if there are other missing places or not, or how well we did filling some of those gaps. Thank you.
Mariah?
So I just wanted to echo both Council Member Winterstein and Ramos' comments about this. First of all, I was really happy to see that there were additional groups that were being funded. So I think some of the smaller groups are starting to understand that in terms of capacity building, that they would have an opportunity to take a look at this. I would want the Human Services Commission, and I would like a broader look across there. Just for example, when I see that Life Enrichment Options was trying to do some capacity building, for example, and was not funded under this and was also not funded under the Human Services grant, if I'm remembering that correctly, from last that we looked at that my concern is always both from the Human Services Commission side and these community fund recommendations that if there's a small group that's doing great work, but they just don't have the money to have a professional grant writer, that they're maybe losing out on opportunities. And I just want to make sure, and I know we're very keyed into that, but I just want to bring that up as something additional to think about. And I would like to see a broad view and comparisons when we're talking about this. It is really important to have this in terms of capacity building, but just to take all of that into consideration, I think is important. Thank you.
Stacy?
The only comment I want to make is I'm not quite sure we have the right criteria laid out. It wasn't in the packet when we were looking at it initially at services, but so many of the requests could have gone different ways, and I also think that there is so much overlap with human services that I think it's possible that we don't have the right criteria for this community fund, and I don't know what that looks like right now, but I think that's part of the issue, which I'll call some confusion about what these different funds are for and why we seem to have similar questions year over year.
Seeing no further questions, all those in favor of approving the 2018 Community Fund recommendations as amended by the Council Services and Safety Committee for inclusion in the 2018 budget signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries unanimously. Moving now to good of the order. Anyone have anything for good of the order? Bill?
I just want to mention that last week, I think many of us were at the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank breakfast, which was a raucous success, and I think they raised over $150,000 this year, and it's our local nonprofit that is a stone's throw from here that we support in many ways, all of us in many ways, and just want to mention that because I love that they have their breakfast and bring in some money on one day. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, then we are adjourned.